Okay, thank you everyone for stopping into what I think will be your last seminar of the day. My name is Tom Wark, and I am the owner of Wark Communications, the public relations and media relations firm. I'm also the executive director of the Specialty Wine Retailers, and I write Fermentation, the daily wine blog. Just a show of hands here real quick. How many of you either engage in e-commerce, email marketing, or social media? How many of you don't? Raise your hand if you don't. That's what I thought. Okay. Well, you engage in e-commerce, but how do you know that your e-commerce efforts are yielding you the results that you want? And you utilize email marketing. How do you know that your emails are as effective as they could be? And of course, it appears that we've all jumped into the social media pool. How do you know you're not wasting your time as you try to use social media to market your products and services to people who also use social media? All these questions boil down essentially to one thing, that is measuring your efforts, measuring your marketing efforts in the course of trying to sell your products and services. If all goes well, you'll walk out of this seminar with a better idea of how to measure your efforts in these three areas: email, e-commerce, and social media. Hopefully, what you learn will help you be more efficient in terms of how you sell and in terms of how you engage your customers. And to help us work through these issues, we have three panelists who are here to help us. But I want to say a little bit about the way this session is going to work before we jump in. We have no bells and whistles for you today. We're going to do this the old-fashioned way, not because we have to, but because we want to. From the outset, we're going to make this sort of an interactive seminar. And so what that means essentially is, although I've got questions for our three panelists here today, and I'm going to ask them those questions, if at any time you have a question or you have a comment to make, raise your hand. We've got somebody here in the room. I think it's going to be Ben, who will come to you and he will have you ask your question. And the reason I want to do it this way is I think this is going to guide us down the route that most of us want to go, as opposed to, although it never happens, occasionally a speaker will start to go on about things that we don't care about. By being able to stop them and ask a question, it gets back to where the audience wants to go on this issue. So again, don't wait for the end of this session to ask your questions. Go ahead and raise your hand, shout out, whatever it is you have to do. And we'll get you immediately, and that's how we'll move this session down the road. So let me introduce the panelists that we have here today. In the middle is April Damron. April Damron founded Damron Marketing in 2009. She helps her clients build customer relations through both traditional and direct channels, establish brand image through brand management and creative solutions, and enhance their business through strategic planning and program management. Among those she's helped in brand management include Flora Springs Winery and Vineyards, Windsor Oak Vineyards and Winery, Elevation 10, Maison Mark and Domain, Herringer Estates, Napa Valley Grape Growers, Silver Oak, and Twomey Cellars. April is here to talk to us about measuring e-commerce efforts. At the far left-hand side, we have Ed Thralls. Ed Thralls is the social media marketing manager, and I had fun saying that over and over before this started. The social media marketing manager for Vintage Wine Estates, and in that position, Ed drives the social and digital marketing efforts for Cundy Family Estate, Girard Winery, Cosentino Winery, Windsor Vineyards, and several other boutique brands in Napa and Sonoma. And he's here to speak to us about measuring your social media efforts. Ed also writes, by the way, winetonight.com, which is it's a very, very good blog, and I suggest that you read it when you have the chance. That's winetonight.com. And it turns out that Ed has to watch his P's and Q's because his boss is with us today. Ray Marcinkowski is the online marketing director, again, for Vintage Wine Estates, and he's here to speak to us on the issue of measuring email marketing. Ray has a long history of being involved with digital direct-to-consumer technology. He started his own marketing communications firm in the early 90s. He worked at a number of other internet-based companies after that, including Avant, a web-based e-commerce merchandise planning solution for large online retailers, as well as with QuickBooks.com, before coming up to the North Bay and taking a position with Vintage Wine Estates. So with that, unless anyone has any questions about what we're going to do here, I want to jump in and start with April. April's here to talk to us about e-commerce, and I've always thought that the goal of e-commerce was pretty simple. Let's sell some stuff. But I suspect it might be a little bit more complicated than that. I wonder if you could talk to us briefly about the kind of goals that e-commerce, people who engage in e-commerce ought to have, and what they would be interested in tracking, what sort of metrics they'd be interested in tracking when it comes to their e-commerce efforts.
Sure. Can everybody hear me? So being the consultant that I am and answering every question with, it depends, and we need to spend more time on that before we can have a formal answer, I supplied a handout, and there's plenty extras up here if you're interested. But it's more so that you don't have to necessarily listen to me speak through every metric that we could analyze and talk about for the next hour. But more, when I meet with clients, it depends on your brand, and it depends on the goals that you have with your website and your e-commerce. Are you trying to move product? Are you trying to reach a new audience? Are you trying to increase your net revenue? There's a lot of different goals depending on your brand and depending on the size of your mailing list and your other marketing activities. So what I did was I broke up the goals that I thought that most wineries might be trying to do some testing into 6 different goals. One of that being that when you look at your e-commerce and how you're performing over the year, I assume that you always want to sell the same amount of wine for more money. So we've heard a lot about the average price going up, those types of things. So what is the net revenue through that channel, and how and your goal should be to increase it always. Number 2 is, how is the channel performing? So maybe your net revenue is flat, but perhaps the channel is performing better than it has in the past by selling more cases, or you see that Wine Club is ordering between shipments and things like that. So the channel compared to the tasting room and Wine Club and direct mail, how is that channel performing? And then number 3 is sort of, right now there's some wineries who are doing a lot of their own version of a flash site where it's an end of vintage sale, or you kind of have a couple pallets of something that you want to move. So perhaps one of your goals is to move product and not necessarily worrying about the net revenue. Also leveraging shipping promotion. We've talked a lot today about shipping and how easy it's going to be and compliance, but we still have to pay a lot for it. $50, $60 sometimes to get that case of wine. So obviously during holidays, competitive times, you're running shipping promotions. Are they working? Was it the best promotion for you? So that can be a goal within your e-commerce. And then acquiring new customers or targeting a specific audience. We can talk a little bit about that with social media. With the targeted audience, that was my thought, was that perhaps you want to see if your Facebook fans are purchasing, something like that. And then leveraging your advertising or search marketing. And I'm not sure how many people are doing any paid advertising or search marketing. It can be a little more sophisticated on the e-commerce end, but if you are, you want to make sure you're leveraging those advertising dollars. So those are the goals, and I have listed the types of metrics underneath them, and I guess I'd like it really more to be, if this is a goal that you have, and someone would like to ask me what I would pull away from this.
Well, I had one question first then. Give us an example. How many people have e-commerce sites attached to their winery or their business where we're hoping people come on a daily basis and cha-ching, buying something? We have a lot of them. Okay. Tell me what the very most basic metrics are that any business that engages in e-commerce has to be checking on either a daily, weekly, or monthly basis.
Well, that would be your sales and your number of orders and your net per case.
And what information can I derive from that if I have all 3 of those pieces of information?
Well, you always want to make sure that orders are coming in, because there could be something wrong, as simple as wrong with your website. There's errors, there's customer service problems. So we want to make sure that people are ordering. We want to make sure that there's people responding to a promotion. If you send out an email, you think you sent out an email, and you have 0 sales after an hour, it's red flag. So that would be sort of the daily monitoring. On a month-to-month basis, you should be tracking your sales, but also comparing to the year previous. So taking into account seasonality and things like that. So for instance, the month of January may be slow compared to the previous month because it was a huge holiday month. So you may want to compare your January to the January before. So looking at where were we a year ago rather than last month.
Do you have recommendations, though, on how to compare time periods over time periods? Do you have recommendations on what are the best comparisons for looking at e-commerce stats?
It depends on the company's infrastructure, really, on their accounting and their e-commerce reporting. Usually, you want to look at a fiscal year and match your e-commerce to your annual goals within that fiscal year. So if your fiscal year is November 1st or January 1st, what have you. And then it should be a monthly report that the manager gets, because you really can't make your decisions based on your next email or based on your next advertising spend or what have you without having that information to make those decisions and know where do you put your resources.
Okay. Any questions? If you got one, just raise your hand. I want to come back to you and talk to you a little bit about where one finds the best source of statistics on their e-commerce practices. Before I do that, I want to jump to Ed. And Ed's here to talk to us about social media. So let's start with the most basic question about measuring social media. Should we care about how many likes, how many fans, how many followers, how many friends that we have? To put it another way, are these the most appropriate metrics to be measuring if we're engaging in social media? And are there others that we need to be concerned with? Or do I just care about how many people are fans of me?
Yes, of course. Life is a popularity contest, just like high school. No, actually, this comes out a little taller. Actually, that might be easier. I would turn that around and ask a question. You as a company, are you a company that wants 1 million Twitter followers, or are you a company that wants to acquire 1 million net new customers via Twitter? Right, that's how you need to really look at it. If you just look at friends, followers, those type of metrics, how many here are familiar with the company Vintank here in Napa? Paul Mabry created a blog post a couple weeks ago about this very topic and talked about how that type of metric is considered a vanity metric. And if you look at it solely in a vacuum on its own, it doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't tell you anything. But it doesn't necessarily mean, in my opinion, that it means absolutely nothing. So perhaps, if you're basing your social media success solely on these numbers, you're going to have a problem. With everything, I think, as we talked about here, it depends. You've got to look at it with some other type of information. Tom, me and you talked on the phone just the other day, and you had the question about this very topic. So I'm looking at somebody on Twitter, and he's got so many thousand followers, and he's had so many updates, and his clout score is X. What can I really bring from that?
His what score is that? What?
What's that?
You said his
Clout
something.
score.
Okay.
Clout, K-L-O-U-T. It's a scoring system out there. If you go to clout.com, it's another company trying to find a way to measure your influence out there on the internet. And so I want to use this to illustrate why I think followers on its own probably doesn't mean a whole lot, but with some other information would mean a lot more. And hopefully you guys get the perspective that I'm trying to put out there, which is you're going to have to use a lot more information to come to a well-informed decision rather than a single method. So I had this one guy who was looking at calling me and saying, I want to review your wines. And I was like, all right, tell me about your website, what's the traffic, et cetera, et cetera. I did a little research on Twitter and Facebook to see what kind of following he had. Well, he had 2,000 followers. Like, all right, that's not too bad. But he also had about 1,900 that he was following. I'm like, all right, that may not tell me a whole lot. However, as some of you might know, maybe you don't, it's easy to turn on an auto-follow feature. So if he followed 1,900 people, There's a chance that a lot of his followers just followed it back automatically. But the one telltale sign there was that he had 61,000 tweets. That's a lot. That's a lot of tweets. So he's saying a lot and not getting a lot of people to follow him. And his clout score was about 49, which is kind of in the middle of the road. So now compare this to somebody who I trust and I think is fairly influential in the space. She had 5,600 followers and was following only 1,750 followers. So that tells me right there's a lot more people following her for her information, what she's sharing, and she's not auto-following. She's picking and choosing who she's following. And so a ratio of followers to following means a little bit something there. She's only tweeted 23,000 times, and her clout score was 61. So I can go in a lot more detail about this offline, but the idea there is that, no, I don't think you can look at just followers and friends as a single metric to tell you how well you're doing in social media.
But, yes, sir.
Is there something else besides clout out there?
Yes, there is. There's K-Cred. If you look up K-Cred, that's another one that I know. And again, talking about my friends there at Vintank, they've come out recently with a winery social index. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that a little bit later with some information, but they have something that's a little bit more specific to this vertical with how you can rank against your competitors.
Yeah, I have a question more on the e-commerce and social media. We can talk about metrics and there's many ways to do it, but sorry, can you hear me? How do you measure, or how can you measure conversion rates from social media? We know we could do that for many sites, but forget about the followers, and I agree with you. I mean, there's many ways of seeing that, but if we say something or do something, and we call to action to actually do a sale, how can we know, or is there ways to know, because it's very hard, it's a hard question, to measure conversion rates from social media? Not from, a web page, you're coming from there. If a sale's made, you can measure it came from that page, but any tools or any ideas?
Right. Actually, I'll have a lot more of that a little bit later. Maybe, I don't know if you queue it up or if you want me to go into detail here, but just to answer the straight up question up front is that you're absolutely right. It is tough to track a direct sale or a direct conversion from an activity that occurred on your social media channel. However, there are ways that I have found that I'm using to try to get as much of that information as possible. And one of those tools that I use is Google Analytics. How many people here are using Google Analytics? How many here are using it just for managing their website traffic? How about for conversions on the website? Not a lot. How much for any of their social media information? Okay. So a lot of folks on Google Analytics, I don't see a lot of folks using it for each of those pieces. There's a URL builder in there, and every time, there's just one of the tips that I'll use. There's all kinds of ways I think you could do this. One of the ones that I use, if you use the URL builder in Google Analytics, you can set up campaigns, sources, and mediums, and then if I'm driving them to a particular website, product page, event, whatever it happens to be, I make sure I set that link up with that URL builder, and then that's what I use to post on my social media platform. And then Google Analytics will then allow me to track that, including, because we've got it hooked up, maybe Ray, you'll talk about this a little later, we have the ability with our backend systems to show our product sales in Google Analytics, so I can track that all the way to conversion. So that's just one way.
Let me move this on to Ray real quick. Ray's here to talk to us about email marketing. We all understand, right, how to send an email? Okay. But here's the question. What's the actual metrics? What are the actual metrics that an email marketer should be measuring to determine an email or an email campaign is effective? Is there anything beyond open rates and click-throughs that we ought to be concerned with as we engage in email marketing?
Great. Yeah, it's a great question. So if there's two things probably I'd like you guys to take away from what I'm talking about today. One is that when it comes to email marketing, or when it comes to any kind of electronic marketing, really, that if it can be measured, it can be improved. And there's tremendously powerful tools for measurement. There's no reason you can't get as much data as is out there into your analysis, and that should drive what you're doing going forward. The second thing is that email is a wonderful customer relationship management tool, but it's not a very good demand generation tool. If you're looking to acquire new customers, people introduce your winery or your services to a new audience, It's not the best tool for that. That's unsolicited email, often can be seen as spam. So if you use that as your lens and you're looking at the tools available to you, open rates and click-through rates, very important. That's probably the number one metric that we all look at, but certainly there's a lot beyond that. First off, open rates can be called into question to some degree because a lot of the email systems still use the old tried and true pixel tracking method. Do you guys know what that is? Essentially, you're probably using an email tool like Vertical Response or perhaps something a little bit more sophisticated, but they determine open rates by putting in a little invisible pixel, and when somebody reads your email, that pixel renders and it records as having been opened. Well, so many people, especially with mobile phones and the adoption of email on mobile and Outlook by default not showing images, a lot of times that pixel doesn't even render. So you might have your open to click-through ratios look really, really good. That's because a lot more people actually open your email than you know about. They just didn't register. So you definitely want to look beyond that. For example, you want to look at your unsubscribe rates. I strongly recommend that you track those. If you keep a dashboard of your email performance month over month, you want to include unsubscribe rates as part of your metrics. The reason is you might do something that triggers a large number of unsubscribes. That says that your audience is, you've disengaged them. This isn't something they want to see. That's going to drive your content going forward. And hopefully we'll talk about content and segmentation a little bit more going forward. But you want to make sure that you are not fatiguing your list. Unsubscribes will tell you that as well. Related to unsubscribes is your deliverability. Most of your current best-of-breed email packages today are going to give you a deliverability report, not only who's seeing it, but who's seeing it by their ISP. Maybe you're getting a really low delivery rate through something like Yahoo Mail or through AOL, God forbid. And the reason is twofold. One is that sometimes, depending on your spam score, you might be being blocked. Number two is that some users don't really understand the difference between I don't want to see this and this is spam. So if a lot of people click that horrible little red button and call you a spammer, then an ISP has no choice but to label you a spammer, and they're going to start blocking everything you see. So you definitely want to look at your spam complaints, and your email software should be able to, most email software that I know of is going to actually give you that in a kind of a nice clean report. There are ways to resolve that as well. Sometimes it's a little bit arduous, but you can kind of address that and make sure that people are getting the email that they want to be getting. Ed had already pointed out the multi-channel, sort of long-tail analytics. It's really important to look at, to use your URL builder not only with your social campaigns, but with your email campaigns. Track those through Google Analytics. I can't say enough good about it. I've used a lot of great, best-of-breed analytics applications, and Google Analytics is right there, and it's 100% free. And it is as sophisticated as you want to get, depending on how far you want to dig into it. That's going to show you not only performance of your email, but it's going to show you perhaps you've got issues on your website. Maybe you're sending people to the home page and they're dropping out. Perhaps your call to action wasn't strong enough. Maybe it was a little bit confusing. Maybe you need to spend more time doing some A/B testing on your landing page content. All of that's going to come through your multi-channel analysis package. And of course, you're going to be looking at revenue and ROI, right? That's a big one. There's a handful of ways you might want to track that. Might be through your e-commerce software, might be through your email software, might be through analytics, but you definitely want to look at that. Not just your direct revenue that's coming from the email, people who clicked through, but you're also going to want to look at your long-tail revenue. Is there a halo effect? Did people get an email from you and then 3 or 4 days later on the weekend they had a little downtime, they went and bought a case of wine? Most emails probably have a 3 or 4 day lifespan. You might get things that, they typed in your web address, but that's still attributable to your email campaigns. So those are the ones I like to look at.
Okay. Unless anyone has a question, I have one question, and then I want to go on and talk to you all about tools. But I have one client for whom I craft emails and send them out. It's a winery, and he hates every time we send out an email because on average we get 2 people who unsubscribe. Now this is a list of about 8,000. So at what point, at what percentage of unsubscribes, or what kind of unsubscribe rate should we all start to get concerned with? Mm-hmm. Tell me it's not 2.
2 isn't bad.
That's what I tell him.
I'd be pretty happy with 2, actually. But Unfortunately, I can't give you a rule of thumb for that, and here's why. Because what you want to look at is what you want to try. People often will ask me questions like that, where it's like, well, my open rate is 60%. Is that good? And it might be good and it might be bad. What we want to look at is are you continually improving over time? So you want to benchmark yourself. It's very similar to what we were just talking about on the web. You want to look at what you did before, what you're doing now, and you want to use these tools to make sure that you are continually improving over time. So unsubscribe rate is a piece of that. That's going to tell you a lot. That's going to tell you perhaps your offers or your content isn't engaging enough. It's going to tell you if you're fatiguing your list, you're emailing them too often. That's really going to kind of help you dial into that. List attrition is simply going to happen. It's a fact of life. It's not necessarily a bad thing, because the key thing with email marketing, and of course email makes people roll their eyes a lot because we all get so much of it every day, you don't want people hanging around who don't want to get your emails. If they unsubscribe, that's like trimming a tree, right? It's got to, in order to keep it healthy, you want to cut back that dead wood.
I should tell my client, this is good. We need more of these, right?
Exactly. That's what you tell them.
Okay.
You tell them it's not high enough.
That's great advice. Thank you. Thank you, Ray. That'll go over real well. Any questions? Okay. I want to dig down into this issue of actual tools that we use to measure a variety of different things, and I want you all to name names. So let me start with April. In terms of measuring your e-commerce efforts, what are the tools that folks should be using, are probably using, and that are out there for them to measure all these different aspects of their e-commerce activities?
Well, when we asked a show of hands on who was using Google Analytics to track their e-commerce or conversion, I think you called it, I think there was maybe 10 people. So I just, with the platforms I'm familiar with and the contacts I have, I asked Vin65, eSeller, eWinery Solutions, and Nexternal. If you guys are on those platforms, I assume a large percentage, right? Is that a good assumption? They will install the Google Analytics e-commerce tracking functionality automatically for you. They will help you with that. It's part of the package. So you need to get that done tomorrow if that's not already in place. And what that does is that it takes above and beyond just the export that you may be running off of that platform, that maybe tells you from an email or perhaps from from a campaign. I'm trying to think how a lot of them track. You can sort by product, you can sort by time frame, you can sort by email. But when you have the Google Analytics tracking your shopping cart, it opens up an entire new level and dimension of the sophistication that you can track. So the gentleman that had the question about my social media, they're doing pretty sophisticated with creating a specific URL. You may not have the resources or the time to do that for every email or Facebook post. One of the ways I do it is I look by referring source, and it's just very simple. And I can say, okay, this month, 5 people came from Facebook and they spent X amount of dollars, and it's right there in front of me. So that's one example. I mean, all three of us obviously can't speak highly enough about Google Analytics.
Let me ask a question with regard to Google. Is there any alternative to Google Analytics that provides the same power? I'm just curious.
Well, I think not the multi-channel view. I think that the platforms, in my experience, are pretty clunky. I mean, I work on several of them, and they'll give you a snapshot or a dashboard that looks helpful, but it's not comparing, specifically answering to these questions that I outlined here, for instance. So you have to do that digging anyway. So I mean, you can use your accounting software. You can sometimes shipping promotion. You need to use your shipping software. There's other tools, but as far as tracking what I did on email, what I did on Facebook, what's been the promotion on my homepage, what coupon code, et cetera, the complete view, that's really where the Google Analytics is amazing. And the fact that our e-commerce providers are willing to install that for us for free, it helps us report on just a more sophisticated level.
Okay.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions on that? I think we're all Google Analytics fans.
Okay.
So I'll just add, yeah, there are other tools out there. I mean, obviously
You're speaking to email right now, then, correct?
No, I'm talking analytics in general. So you've got bigger packages like Omniture has a suite of tools that you can use. You've got ATG has tools that you can use, and they're all very good. In fact, they're excellent, but they're also very, very expensive. So at an enterprise level, that might make sense, depending on, because they're getting very granular and they've got full-time analysts who need to drill into this. But the amazing thing to me is that the Google Analytics products over the years has expanded to encompass a lot of the features that some of those big guys have had for a long time, and that was why you were using them. For example, A/B content testing or multivariate testing, which allows you to take your homepage or other kind of landing page and change up elements so that 50% of your viewers see one version, 50% of your viewers see another version, and it tells you which one was the best. So that kind of informs your decisions going forward for how you want to lay out your content. That's free if you want to learn how to use it. And again, I haven't seen, at least with a small to medium-sized business, any reason to spend any more than zero.
Right. Question, yes.
Is there a better time of day and time to do your email, social media,
That's a great question. I unfortunately don't have a good answer for you. I can give you some. Oh, I'm sorry. If anybody didn't hear, the question was: Is there a time that's better than any other time to send an email or execute a social media campaign or tweet or update or whatever you got? What I have found, and working across brands and across several wineries, and there's a handful, as you guys heard, that we're working with, is that each winery kind of has a sweet spot. And by being fairly rigorous in your testing and looking at your dashboard over time, I think you're going to determine what works best for your particular audience. We've noticed, for example, that some brands have an equal number or a greater number of business buyers than home buyers. Or people buying for personal use. That being the case, people are often getting emails at their work email addresses. So we send during work hours. Our open rates, our click-through rates, and our purchase rates are actually higher. Others, have more of a tasting room presence. People get out on the weekends and they go check us out. Have a good time, make a wine tasting day of it. They tend to respond on weekends because they're sitting there having a morning cup of coffee, thinking about what they're going to do this weekend. Well, let's go check out the winery. So things that are more location focused works out. So it's really kind of individual by business, but the beauty of it is if you are rigorous and regimented in how you approach your analysis, that'll give you your answer right there. I'll let Ed weigh in on that as well.
Ed, go ahead and weigh in on that, but also you spoke about Cred, you spoke about Cloud, but also mention what other tools are out there that anyone in this room can access to use to measure whether or not their tweets or their Facebook posts or their YouTube videos are having the kind of impact that they want. Are there any other tools that can be accessed immediately that can be used to do that?
Sure. To answer your question, the best time of day, you kind of have to figure out what's best for your audience. I mean, where's your market, and when are they up, and when are they online, depending on the platform that you're in. So it goes back to all those depends situations. In general, from the West Coast, 8 a.m., noon, and 5 have worked pretty well if you haven't been able to do that analysis yet. Okay, and you could do a post, each one of those time frames. You could test them out, try one or the other. It seems to work out, even though we're on the West Coast, and you think, okay, at 8 a.m., it's 11 on the East Coast. Well, folks are kind of maybe coming out of their morning meetings, thinking about lunch, maybe going on and checking something. It just kind of seems to work out. Whereas West Coast, we're just getting started. So it kind of works out for both. But I'm going to throw Vintank out there again. Their Social Connect tool, if you guys aren't using, if you're a winery and not using this tool, they've got free features on this tool, so there's no excuse for you not to be using it and listening and monitoring activity about your brand on Facebook and Twitter and blogs, forums, media like Instagram, etc. And they've got a dashboard that will show you time of day, like a little bar chart, time of day that most of the activity is coming in for your brand. So there's a nice freebie to go look at that. If you go to vintank.com, and the tool is called Social Connect. Yeah, and that feature right there to look at that information is totally free, and that can help you get a feel for where's the right time. So that's one of the big tools that I use, Tom. But there are tons and tons of tools out there. There are free tools. There are really, really, really expensive tools out there. It's really overkill. And I think that's kind of the big challenge for social media. Maybe it's a challenge for some of the other areas too, is that you can boil the ocean really, really quickly and easily, and then what's going to happen is that you're going to think you're measuring the right thing. Oh, I got a lot of followers. Oh, I did this. I got a bunch of likes. And you're going to think you're doing well when, in fact, you're not impacting your business. If I go back, before I talk about these tools real quick, some of the basic things you need to be thinking about measuring social media is think about those business goals, that April talked about. You shouldn't be doing social media just to have fun and engage and all that fun stuff like you might be doing on your own, friend profile. If you're doing it for business, you better be doing it such that it impacts your business goals in a positive manner. Certainly, you do want to measure some of those engagement activities you're doing as well, because then those are going to be leading indicators to tell you if you are going to end up meeting your business objectives or not. Tell you, well, that post I did really didn't do so well because it didn't resonate with my audience for whatever reason. So there's a bunch of engagement.
Oh, wait a minute, back up.
Yeah.
How do I know if any
How do you
given
know?
tweet or any given Facebook post was effective?
Well, you got to do it over time, like we've talked about here. Okay, if I post at a certain time of day on a particular topic, and I get, let's say, 10 shares, 20 likes, and about 10 comments, and you compare that to your previous 10 posts, and it's been crickets, you probably have hit something there. So you have to compare it over time to your previous posts and type of topics, etc., and do a comparison analysis.
So we are looking at retweets. We are looking at comments that come back at us. We're looking at comments on the Facebook post or shares. We're
Correct.
looking at those to determine
I would
how
say
effective we are.
on Facebook, it's likes, comments, and shares, and I like to do that by day. So it's average per day because each month, back and forth. And then Twitter mentions and retweets. I think much like unsubscribes, unlikes are very indicative of what you're doing on Facebook as well. So I think you need to pay attention to those over time.
And it's just a matter of measuring over time how many each of these different posts or tweets or whatever it is gets reacted to.
Correct.
And keeping track of it.
Correct.
That's a lot of work.
Hi there. Oh, hello?
There you go.
Okay. Hi, I'm Ben. I'm with ShipCompliant. I work in marketing, so I thought I'd add a little here. So Facebook Insights is a tool for the people that run the page for your winery, for your company, and it's getting a lot better. And Facebook's making a lot of changes. And a lot of it has to do with them going public, but they're trying to help brands understand what posts work and which ones don't. A couple weeks ago, they came out and said that of all your followers, anytime you post something, only 16% of your followers, a brand's followers, will see that in their newsfeed. So if you have 1,000 followers and you have this great update and only 160 people see it, that's a problem. So what they're trying to do is let brand managers and these page managers know how to improve their posts. So what they've done is when you go into Facebook Insights now, by each post, it has a little percentage number in the bottom corner, and that tells you what percentage of your followers actually saw this post. So I would recommend really using that to determine, okay, why did 48% of my followers see this post versus 8% only saw this other one? Facebook also really loves photos in their new algorithm. They just bought Instagram, and you're starting to see those kind of pop up towards the top. So, you got to be a little creative, but think about why, certain posts are getting read by more of your following versus not, and then I'd probably, cater to that trend as well. So.
For those of you who have not met Ben, this is Benjamin Bacon. It's true, that's your name.
Is he
I
related
like
to
it.
Kevin at all?
Ben is the incoming VP of Marketing for ShipCompliant, so we're pretty happy to have him. I wanted to go back and talk, and you had touched on it earlier, Ray, and that is the composition of an email. How do we go about measuring what in our email has the best results or gives us the best results? Is there a way to measure the different wording, the different placement of graphics, perhaps, to determine if we're doing it right? Is there a better way to craft an email based on measuring past results?
So when it comes to content, again, it's going to depend on your audience, and they are going to give you that answer. Most email software will allow you to split your list So you can segment in various ways. If you want to, for example, look at customer history, you want to look at recency, you want to look at how much they spend over time. I mean, it's your classic marketing, RFM, we all remember that from school. But those are still very strong and still very powerful. So what I would suggest is that you test it. You try something that's more graphically oriented. You try something that's more text-based, maybe something more like a blog post or leveraging some content from your website. Try something that's more offer-driven, that's more content-driven. And then split your list on whatever makes sense for your particular business. And then over time, you're going to see that these things do well, these things do poorly. We're going to do more of what works. We're going to do less of what doesn't. So in order to determine that effectiveness, I, again, would strongly recommend that you tag all of your links through analytics, or if your e-commerce application will support this, ours does, we'll actually set up an affiliate code, and we'll track by affiliate code. So that tells you how many people looked at it, how many people clicked through, what did they actually do. And then we measure that over time. And sometimes this stuff can be actually counterintuitive, and that's the amazing thing. For example, we did a test just a couple weeks ago where we did a Father's Day promotion. One was, look at our top 5 dad-approved wines for Father's Day. The second email said, take 15% off all wines for Father's Day. We were a little bit surprised because we did twice the amount of business on the one that said, check out our top 5. The open rates were just about the same, but for some reason, nobody was interested in saving 15%, but everybody was interested in seeing what we recommended for dad. So, that I wouldn't have predicted that, but the answer was right there.
How many people are sending out 2 different emails with the same call of action to measure whether or not one is more effective than the other? How many would consider doing it if you're not already? Okay. It's a pretty standard tool, but not many people, because we don't have the time, we don't engage in it as often as we should, but it's a great tool to see what works, as long as you can be very definite about what it is you're asking people to look at.
I just wanted to add to that, as a user of some of the winery-specific e-commerce, if you're sending emails through those platforms, it's not necessarily a function that they have built in automatically to segment your list for you. So you should be segmenting your list, even if it's as basic as a wine club member and a non, or they live in California and they don't, for an event, for instance, or something like that. But just on that note, if you're looking to do a traditional split test email, most of the platforms here don't have that built in.
Question?
I have a social media. I mean, the whole goal is to sell wine, right? So basically, if you had to rank them, Facebook, Pinterest, and Twitter, how would you rank them? I'd be interested to see the perspective of each of you.
How would we rank how much time you should spend on each one of those? To sell wine directly or just overall? I don't think you could say you look at it directly. I think you got to look at it like anything else overall. Is there anything that's happening? Is there anything I can do in those platforms to help me sell wine, no matter where it actually happens, right?
I'm saying more from obviously different size wineries.
Okay, so it's more like an effort question. I think you got to be on Facebook. It's approaching 1 billion users. I think they're thinking they're going to have 1 billion by August this year, something like that. Regardless of what you think about the IPO and their stock price and all that, I think that's where the people are. So I think you definitely need to be there. Whether you're on Pinterest or something like Twitter, I think it's going to depend on your market and what you're trying to do. I have a couple brands that we think Pinterest is right up our alley. Right now, you have the women demographic. You also have the luxury product demographic, fashion, and all that type of stuff. So we have a couple brands that we want to reach that same kind of audience there. So you have to ask yourself if your audience is there before I would jump into Pinterest. The great thing about Pinterest is that when somebody does click on it, once the picture comes up, if they click on it again, it takes you directly to your website. So it is a great linking platform, referral platform. Good, that's the word I was looking for. Thank you. Referral platform. And then Twitter, tons of people are going to Twitter looking for deals. Twitter takes a lot of effort as well. So I think you just have to think about your communication style, if you're able to put the time and effort out there. But I think Twitter is worthwhile as well. But if you are strapped for resources, people in your organization, maybe you don't do as much Twitter.
Let's do a little, I'll get to you, but let me ask people to raise their hands. How many of you in promoting your brand, your product, or your service are actively using Facebook? Raise your hand. Put them down. How many of you are actively using Pinterest? Raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, oh, a few. How many of you are regularly using Twitter? Interesting. Yes, you got a question.
Yeah, I get into arguments with, the question was, should you automatically post Twitter updates from your Facebook account, right? That's the question. I get into some arguments with some folks online. You've got the utopian folks out there that say, it's got to be kumbaya, and you have to have your individual message, and you got to go out in each one, and you got to talk to each person like that. And I think in the real world, we know you have to think about efficiencies. So I think you got to make the decision for yourself, but here's some things you need to think about to do that. How you talk on Facebook and how you talk on Twitter are two different things. If I'm on, you can do both directions, by the way. If you're on Twitter and I go, buy this wine, hashtag Napa, and I have it automatically posted to Facebook, people who just hang out on Facebook and go, what's this hashtag business all about? And it turns people off. And vice versa, it's kind of the same thing. If you've got this really long status update that ends up with an ellipsis and a FB dot shortcut over on Twitter, people are going to think you're lazy. Why do I want to deal with this? So I think you got to think about your message and what you put in there, knowing that it's going to go over there. And number two, make sure that if you know it's automatically posting on multiple platforms, that you go and check and converse when there's people replying. Because what will happen is if I post on Facebook, it shows up on Twitter, but I'm just hanging out on Facebook, people are replying on Twitter, and it's crickets, then they know, okay, this is automated, they can go real quick and they're gone. They're unfollowing you. So those are the things you got to think about before you decide to continue doing that.
April, when it comes to measuring e-commerce, of course, it's all about the shopping cart and whether or not we get the cha-ching there. But is there a good reason to measure how people move through your site, and how would you go about measuring that? And can anyone who's using either Vin65 or any of the other systems, can they easily measure how people are moving through your site? And again, what information can I gain from that?
Yeah, and yes, you should be measuring how you come in, the referrals, organic traffic, and then if they typed into your site, what they're doing once they're there. And again, the tool that I use is Google Analytics, and it has a visual. It's like really great. It'll tell you what percentage of link they're navigating from your homepage, and you can see your top pages. You can see their funnels. How are they coming in? Where are they exiting? Bounce rates. All of that contributes to the design of your website, the functionality of your website, and ultimately getting them into the shopping cart. If you don't have the shopping cart functionality and you're just measuring your content, it's difficult to make that connect on. They ended up in the store, and I have my e-commerce report and I have my website report, but I don't have them connecting. So it's difficult to make changes to content or to navigation or best practices. And a lot of it, with these smaller brands, I'm not sure how many of you are doing so many things, but you're also the wine club manager and the customer service person. But a lot of it's just asking those questions to your users and using your intuition that, hey, they're getting error messages, or they didn't know how to check out. And you talk to people, we talk about the baby boomers, a lot of them are purchasing, they're trying to purchase online, they have problems, they just want to email you and they just want to talk to you. So, ask them, what was wrong? How can we make it easier next time? And some of my best insights have come from just interacting with the customer or the staff that does interact with the customer, tracking those complaints that come in your info box or come on your Facebook page. And being ready to make a change if there's a problem.
Speaking of tracking your customers, do any of you in anything that you do you ever do surveys of your clients or your own customers and actually use survey software? And if you do, what do you use?
Yeah, actually, we do quite a bit of survey. We do an automated survey 30 days after a first purchase. So after 30 days, we assume they've got the wine, they've had a chance to try it, they've seen it, they've enjoyed it, and then we send out a very short, very brief follow-up. And it's just 4 simple questions. Actually, it's recently become 5 simple questions, but that was a marketing demand. I wanted to keep it down to 4. But the question are, were you satisfied with the product? Were you satisfied with the price? Overall, would you shop here again? And then there's an open text piece that basically lets them just say whatever they want to say. And it's great because it allows us to put together a site satisfaction score. Typically we have 4 options, and the top 2 box scores are the ones that we look at. And we do that with every new customer 30 days after first purchase. We've also done special ones where if we're looking to get an answer, we're following up to a campaign or something like that. Typically, we're using SurveyMonkey for all of this stuff. It's really cheap. Actually, it's free for basic stuff. We have an account that we spend $20 a month or something to do some additional things. We've got links. And then lastly, I would probably just add that, and this tags on to what April was just saying, don't be afraid to ask your customer, and don't be afraid to make it very, very easy for them to reach out to you, because that voice of the customer is just vitally, vitally important. The thing that still surprises me is occasionally you get transactional emails that come from noreply@whatever.com. I mean, why on earth would you not want somebody to reply to something that probably has an 80 to 90% open rate because it's transactional? Why would you want to do that? We as small companies have the ability to do that, and when a customer talks to us, and even if they're complaining, it's really a gift, because that's an opportunity for improvement. And again, if it can be measured, it can be improved. Improvement over time, that's what it's all about. We want to make sure we make it as easy as possible for them to get a hold of us.
Question over here.
Hello. So you've done all this analyzing, and you have your metrics, and you see maybe some holes or some things that you want to change. What is it better to just do it, just flip a switch and go from A to B, or is it easier on your customers and users to be gradual? We were just talking about maybe changing the format of our newsletter. And is it going to freak people out if we send it out next week and they're like, what is this? I don't know what this is. Or is it a slower implementation of changes to fix the issues that you might have?
How hard do you bite the bullet?
I'll answer that if you'd like. So there's a couple of ways you could approach it. One way would be to just throw the switch and then say, you'll notice things are different this month. Here's why we did it. Here's why we think it's going to be better. We sure would like to hear from you to see if you think it was better. And hopefully they'll let you know. A second option, if you're talking about an online communication, is you could pull out maybe 100 or 200 people and just use them as a test market. See if and then ask them, what did you think? They tell you, it's horrible. I like the old one better. The trick is to separate, people don't like change. Every time Facebook, changes their UI, you see everybody complain for a week, right? And then a week later, everybody's like, "Oh, there used to be a different UI. I don't remember," right? So there's going to be a certain amount of grumbling and grouching, and that's kind of what people do. But I think that's a really easy and ideal opportunity to test. But kind of depends on your audience too. I mean, if they're wine club members, they've got a tremendous amount of loyalty. They like you. They probably love you. In fact, you could probably do what you think is right, and they'll go with it.
I saw a hand back. Yeah.
Yep. I have a question regarding wine club and follow-up. And I've been in the industry a while, and I collect wine, and I like to join wine clubs. First of all, because of the wine, but also to see what other clubs are doing. And most of us are in this business, and we see a lot of the same things over and over. And quite honestly, everyone has barrels and terroir and weather. And it's, try to find something unique. And I joined a wine club recently because I think their wines are very good. They're out of Paso Robles. And I got a few emails, and then I received a handwritten card with a note. And, gosh, you get something like that in the mail nowadays, you kind of almost want to throw it away because it doesn't happen that often. But I was so impressed. I'd been on their email run, but then I received a really nice handwritten card and their business card. And I just thought that was a really nice touch. And I was wondering what you think of something more personalized, going back to what Sasha was discussing this morning about the story. And to me, I think that adds something to it, but I was wondering your thoughts.
Okay. Well, I think that's a great idea, and we've done a lot of that too. I mean, certainly electronic means are very easy and efficient, but there's no substitute for one-on-one contact. What I would add to that is that even when you're talking about the one-to-many relationship of online communication, you still have the opportunities for personalization, and that goes into kind of the segmentation piece that we had talked about. It can certainly go beyond, just sending out an email to your wine club members, dear Bill or dear, whoever, because then it seems personal. A lot of times you might want to send the email from your wine club manager personally, even though that, it's an automated or it's an email campaign that you're sending out. You could still have it be from, Ray at Vintage Wine Estates, and the replies would come to me so that I can reply to them, personally. The last thing I would add to that is that your customer is going to tell you, right? They're gonna respond. You can try things. You can experiment. You can start with a small segment and see if you want to roll that out to everybody. But that one-on-one contact is very, very important. The emails that you open are probably the ones you look at first are the ones that are from your friends, right? They're not the ones that are from a company saying, 15% off. It's more like, hey, let's do this weekend, right? That's the kind of relationship you want to try to have with your customers.
Can I add real quick?
Yeah, sure.
Can I do that real quick? So I want to take this opportunity to mention that don't forget in social media the word social involved in that. Doesn't mean you sit behind the computer all day long talking to your fans and all that kind of stuff. We do a lot of things similarly, personalized like that. We a couple brands. We have something similar to Fan of the Month, and they get a care package from our brand manager when they're doing that. They also get special treatment, like we did a show with Mitch Costantino, a winemaker with Toot Sweet. We grabbed a handful of our most loyal fans and invited them down to sit in the studio and hang out with Mitch during and after that show. And one of our club members happens to own Posterous, which is a blogging tool, and was just acquired by Twitter. And to congratulate him, we did a etched Magnum. Actually, I think it was a 6-liter etched Magnum for him, congratulating him and his business on that. So don't forget to take any opportunity to surprise and delight. And the cool thing about social media is you'll be able to see pretty quickly who are your most loyal fans. I'm not saying bribe them, and things like that. It's a surprise and delight, to just let them know that we appreciate them.
I have an interesting anecdote along those lines. One of my clients, a relatively small winery, he came into work one day and he noticed that there was a terrible review on TripAdvisor about an experience that a visitor to his tasting room had. And so he decided he was going to pick up the phone, call the person, and find out what was wrong. Picked up the phone, had a great conversation with him, and he decided then that every day he was going to call 20 people off of his active purchasing list. People who had purchased, I think, in the last, must have been 8 or 9 months. And he did. Every day he would call 20 people. Unbeknownst to him, we started to track what would happen to the people who he called. And it turns out that they bought considerably more wine going down the road after having received a phone call from the owner of the company. And when he called them, he never asked for the sale. How you doing? This is Joe Smith. Thank you very much for purchasing from us. We're going to be releasing our this, in 6 months or whatnot. Just wanted to call and say thanks. These people became some of the larger purchasers going down the road. 20 phone calls a day. Of course, when he found out that we were tracking it and that they had increased their purchases, he started to make 30 calls a day. So there's that. Any more questions in the room? I thought I saw another hand. Okay, so I want to go back and I wanted to ask each of you this question, and this is the most basic question, and maybe it's a sum-up question. Starting with Ed, what are the 3 things that, in the realm of social media, everyone ought to be measuring and acting on? And then I'm going to ask the same question, April, with regard to e-commerce, and Ray with regard to email. The 3 things with regard to social media that everyone should be measuring and following up on?
Only 3 things, huh? Okay. It really depends, again, on what it is you're trying to do.
Nah,
I
you
can't
can't
stress
say that.
enough the whole business
Just
metric.
3.
You should be tracking your business metrics. So, all right, if you're using Facebook, I think the number one value you need to be paying attention to now is what we call PTAT. That's the people talking about this number. And that is an immediate feedback mechanism on a daily basis that number is updated. When you go to your page, it says, here's how many people like you, and then here's your PTAT. And you can go on anybody's fan page, your competitor's fan page, and you can see what their number is. And this value immediately tells you who is talking about you. And talking means likes, shares, comments, et cetera, et cetera. These stories are showing up in their news feeds. So that is one of the most critical values I look at for success on Facebook. And you should be comparing yourself against your competitors. I think, again, going back to Google Analytics, if we're looking for tracking conversion, I think one of the big ones I use there is conversion by social source. So I did mention using the URL builder. Google Analytics does have a social package in there now. I'm still testing it out. I'm not quite sure it's actually as accurate as I think it needs to be, because when I run the referral reports that you were talking about, plus my campaigns, they don't tie to the social just yet. But
Well, and how does like Hootsuite or something? Oh, I was mentioning Hootsuite, or if you're coming in through a third-party application, you don't necessarily know which platform they were on.
right, so hopefully they expand that out. But I would use the conversion reporting in Google Analytics. That's a big one. And then, this is a big one I'm paying attention to a lot now. I'll throw Vintank out there again. I hope those guys, pay me some money or something. I don't know. The Winery Social Index, it's really pretty interesting. Before, 5 years ago, we were all starting out on this. It was brand new. We didn't really know what was going on. There's enough information out there and tools that we don't really need to recreate the wheel as much anymore. So don't try to rack your head on this. Go see what your competitors are doing and look at the ones that you most compete with. Don't take a look at Yellowtail that has 500,000 followers or fans on Facebook. They only get like 1.8% people talking about them, so who really cares? Whereas like Cundy Family Estate, I've only got 3,200 fans, but close to 10% are talking about us.
Thank you. April, what are the 3 things anyone engaging in e-commerce in the wine industry should be measuring on a regular basis?
Well, since e-commerce is such a sales channel, it really is a business metric. So I would say your net revenue per case by product, as well as how is that channel comparing to your other direct-to-consumer channels. So setting some goals with, what percentage of our business needs to be direct-to-consumer, and of that, what % should be coming through e-commerce, so that you're tracking that. Which isn't an easy task. It sounds like it could be, but depending on your accounting, depending on your SKU setup, depending on our events thrown in there, as merchandise. I mean, this is all about getting to a 9-liter case equivalent. So it is time consuming. Once you get your template set up, though, it's a really nice metric to look at.
Don't I just add up all the sales through e-commerce and then divide it by my total sales and figure out what % is coming through that? No, it's not that easy?
Well, it depends what the goals of your business are.
It depends. Okay, good. It depends. Thank you, April. Ray, what are the 3? Oh, are you?
Yeah, so that was 1.
Okay.
That was number 1.
Gotcha. More depends.
I would say I really like the % of where are you in the % of your annual goal, and how many days left do you have to reach your annual goal. Because that's really a kicker that you can show your team, not only if you're a tasting room manager or wine club, but I mean, in e-commerce, you say, okay, here we are in June. We've got 6, if your fiscal year is calendar year, okay, we've got 6 more months to reach these X amount of dollars. What % are we away from that? And then backing into your campaigns. Well, do we have the campaigns, and does our calendar reflect enough outreach and enough sales compared to last year to reach that goal? If we're off, then we need to think about some other tactics and maybe kick it in gear, or maybe it's like a pat on the back. Hey, we had a great first 2 quarters, and we can really go into the holidays with some confidence. So I really like that one, because it helps you take a look at your marketing calendar and make sure that you have the plans in place rather than suddenly going, oh, it's November 1st and I need to get out my holiday emails.
Right.
And then the third one would be compared to previous year to date. So where are we a year ago? And one thing to always keep in mind, even if it's a footnote at your report or in your calendar or just whatever is easiest for you, is an example is 9/11 or an election year or something like that, that you kind of have to track the trends of what's going on in the world, so that if you had a poor year, there's a reason why. You can kind of put these in your footnotes and go back to it when management says, well, we were up last year, so that you have your reasons.
Thank you, April. Ray, top 3 things we should measure in with regard to email.
I'm going to do this as a 2-part answer. The one is the one you're not going to like, and the one is the one that you're looking for.
You're going to say it depends, huh?
So I'm not going to say that. No,
Okay.
I'm not going to say that. But what I'm going to say is that when you're looking at your campaigns in general, the 3 things you want to make sure is that you are 100% ask-based, and you're maintaining that customer relationship. 2 is that you're as relevant as you can possibly be, so that you're segmented properly. And 3 is that you're measured and you're constantly improving. Now, number 3 is what we're going to drill into the top 3. And you're holding a gun to my head, so I'm going to say what you really want to look at are your click-through rates. You want to look at your funnel. That's your multi-channel analytics. What are people doing once they do click through? And 3, of course, is you want to look at your total revenue and your return on investment for your email campaigns.
That was easy. Okay. Questions? Anyone? Well, then with that, I'm going to wrap this up, and I want to thank all of you for coming and sitting here and participating. I want to thank my panelists, Ed Thralls, April Damron, and Ray Marcinkowski. Thank you both. Thank you all 3 very, very much. You guys have a good, there's a cocktail thing happening later, isn't there? Have some cocktails.